But what does it really mean to be a city? Is a city just the bricks and the buildings that make it up? Or is it something more? We'll explore this idea in this short film and try to answer, maybe only partially, on what makes a city a city. We'll start by investigating the idea of conflict between the old and the new. Such conflict is a part of the history of any city, anywhere in the world. In some cities, the conflict takes a very active form, like in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has always been a highly contested area. It was in this city that three major religions had their roots in: Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And it has been the focus of countless crusades since the Middle Ages. The situation today is as fraught with tension as it was 2000 years ago. Today, Jerusalem is a site of active conflict between the Jews, who believe that the place rightfully belongs to them, and the Palestinians, who've lived in Jerusalem for as long as they can remember and consider the Jews unlawful settlers.
No, when it comes to Jerusalem, I think that the Jews and the Palestinians are living in two completely different movies, and we don't even understand the movie of the other.
Here's an example of how the conflict between the Jewish and the Palestinian communities looks like.
That has left both communities on edge and is becoming more explosive by the day. Following the abduction and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers from a West Bank settlement, Israeli forces raided countless homes and arrested hundreds of people in both Jerusalem and the West Bank, sparking violent clashes. The murder also ignited a wave of anti-Palestinian sentiment in Jerusalem and a series of tit-for-tat attacks. A day after the boy's funeral, a 16-year-old Palestinian boy was abducted outside his home in East Jerusalem and later beaten and burnt alive by a group of Israelis.
Now let's hear what each side has to say about these clashes.
I gotta help this flag a little bit here. That's right. That's right. That's right. This is a view that we've been waiting for 2,000 years. Okay? And this is some of my Arab neighbors down there. And this is the Temple Mount. This is the focus of Jewish prayer for the last 3,000 years. And here's the Mount of Olives, which has seen Jewish burial for the last 3,000 years. So when people tell me that you're living in occupied land, I point to this mountain of history and I ask them, could it be that I'm occupying the ancestral burial grounds of my people? Well, what do you want us to do, pack up our bags and leave? That's not a solution for us. We're against violence, against Arabs, vigilante violence, but we will find and uproot the jihad. We will find them in their bedrooms, and we will not allow them to derail our project of coming back home.
I have the right to start the clashes. I have the right to start fighting because I am under occupation. So even if I started, I don't like this language always telling, well, but you started, it was, everyone was okay. Look, this settler is quiet living. He's not quiet. Silwan means quiet, silent, means it's in Arabic. But since the settlers came, it became the most problematic area. Before it was area that it's open for everyone. Now it's controlled by the settlers. They try to say we want to live in peace and coexistence. How coexistence? You come to my village, you occupy houses, you bring your security guards, the coexistence you make with your donkey.
But this is nothing new. Things have been happening this way in Jerusalem ever since it was established and will continue to do so in the near future. This conflict is an essential part of the identity of Jerusalem as a city and is thus inseparable in its very existence. It defines Jerusalem as a city. There's a second form that the conflict can take. This form of conflict between the old and the new is a more passive and peaceful form. This is what is happening in Beijing right now. The new is slowly edging away the old stays resilient. Beijing is being modernized at a rate never seen before. People are worried that in this process, old Beijing is getting lost somewhere. Here's what people of Beijing have to say about it.
New Beijing is developing extremely quickly. Tall buildings and skyscrapers are popping up everywhere. But I don't want to see too many tall buildings or skyscrapers. What I want to see is the original, authentic features of old Beijing, preserved for other generations as a world cultural heritage. This is what they should have done from the start. In fact, the city is gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
Next up is Mr. Zhu, the proprietor of an old Beijing restaurant, who tries to keep the old Beijing culture alive through the food and its associated culture.
Eating a lot, drinking a lot, everything in abundance. It's a kind of custom, old Beijing. A habit, a tradition, a traditional culture. Everybody's life follows that form as it goes. It has become its own way of living. It's open-hearted. Eating and drinking, it's all done in big quantities. It's more expansive than in southern China. Eating or doing anything, it's more unrestrained. For example, southern Chinese people use small bowls when they drink or eat. Like in Shanghai, they use little chopsticks and little utensils. But in Beijing, they eat with great big bowls. Go for the gusto!
Old Beijing has its own dialect, which is kept alive, of all people, by street food vendors. And then there's the traditional Peking opera. As it's evident now, old Beijing is not about the city anymore. It's moved beyond that to encompass a way of life, a dialect, a cuisine, and much more. Now, we look at another thing that makes cities what they are: immigrants. Immigrants comprise a major component of any city's population and are essential to a city's existence. But how the residents, the locals, treat the immigrants is a variable and changes from city to city. First, we'll have a look at New York, a city known for its cosmopolitan nature, and hear what the immigrants have to say about the city. These immigrants were asked a series of questions on where they're from, what they plan to do in New York, and how they stay in touch with their culture.
I came here because I want a better job.
I came here to study.
I came for education.
I want to get a job.
To find a job and stuff. there is many art culture, a lot of inspiration from art, music.
My father got a job here.
I won a scholarship.
My grandparents immigrated here from Italy.
I come from Thailand.
Germany.
I'm from Korea.
Puerto Rico.
I'm from Argentina.
I'm from Korea.
I'm from Thailand.
I'm from Dominican Republic.
From Ohio.
I eat the food from my culture. I go to visit a lot of times.
Well, I speak my language. I eat Thai food and I do like, I don't know, Thai stuff. I watch TV in Thai, or read in Thai, I guess.
By speaking with my family all the time, and I went to some restaurants, Argentinian restaurants.
In this business, the merchandise I sell is related to that culture, as far as music in Italian, religious articles, there's different Italian saints. We sell cookware to making spaghetti and pasta.
We sort of stay in touch with our Ohio-ness, and also when I go to the farmer's market, I feel very much in contact with the world that I grew up in, which was a very agricultural.
As an influencer on someone.
To have enough money.
I want to be retired. I want to get my pension. You know, that's my dream, my pension.
Grab a success of my life.
It's simple. I just want to have a good life, a good job.
My dream is to become a pharmacist. Here. And a graduate, yeah, work here.
I want to graduate from Parsons and get a job. I will get some job here in New York City as a graphic designer.
I have a family, have children.
Now, to present a complete contrast, let's move on to London, where a recent influx of Roma people is being looked upon with suspicion from the locals, but distrustful of these people, these gypsies as they are often called, and are unwilling to trust them and treat them as fellow citizens. The media has done nothing but make the situation worse by picking out stories that portray these Roma people in a bad light, such as this one incident.
Has been feeding off stories such as Collins, a local chip shop owner who made a lurid claim about some of his Roman neighbours. His story was picked up by papers and TV across the country.
I was stood there, Nicola was stood here at Fridays, and he says, do you want to buy this? I looked down, right, and it was a 3-week-old baby. So I looked back at him, waiting for punchline or joke or laugh. 250. They make out as though they don't know what you're saying, or they don't understand, or they can't speak English. We get them coming into the chip shop and they go,
Well, I've broke that down now to how much is small fish and chips.
Do you know much about where they came from?
No, I don't. Yeah. I'm trying to make a living here running a fish shop. But when they stand outside spitting, that's when it gets up my back. Do not spit in front of this shop.
I don't think we should let them in. We all pay taxes and we pay into the system. These Slovakians and Romanians that are already here, they're taking out in the system and not putting anything back in. When they first come over, they used to knock on the doors and ask if you wanted your gardening doing. And they did do a good job. But the same night, they came back and pinched all my shovels and my tools.
The Roma have been oppressed ever since they migrated into Europe. In Slovakia, from where they're slowly migrating out of, the conditions are worse, much worse. Here's what an immigrant Roma has to say about life in London.
Na Slovensku som proste bol bez práce a proste sociálne úrady, ako sa povie, hej, nám pozastavili sociálne dávky a v tom páde sme nemali šancu ani na živobytie, ani na byty platiť, ani na nájom, nič také. A tým pádom sme prišli tu bývať, ako za lepším životom, hej. 100-krát som tu šťastnejší. Na Slovensku, keby som bol doteraz, tak deti by nezískali žiadne školenie, nič. Aj to, ale aj to, že deti sú rómske a tým pádom ich dávajú do osobitných škôl. A deti vychádzajú len akurát základnú školu a tým pádom končia. A tu majú budúcnosť deti veľkú. Prácu nemám, som zaregistrovaný na job center, ale už od marca neberiem ani korunu job center, nič. Stále mi dávajú sankciu, ale dôvod není, prečo.
How are you managing to support your family?
No, zarobím si ako...
Families to fend for themselves on an open wasteland. Amnesty International have called it a violation of human rights.
Chodím na fúšky, dakedy mám fúšku, dakedy nemám vôbec.
Is there anything that you miss about Slovakia?
Roma have a very difficult history in Romania. The Romani population was enslaved as late as the second half of the 19th century, and the marginalization and discrimination of Roma continues.
The British government is cracking down on immigrants as Britain looks to strengthen its economic competitiveness, according to a recent speech by the Queen. Specific policies include making it harder for the immigrants to get access to driving licenses and national health services. The recently elected government is also rather right-wing, and things in general look bleak for the Roma.
But I would also point out you're in denial over Romania and Bulgaria. Those countries are racked with corruption and organised crime. We in UKIP do not believe it's right and fair for unlimited numbers of people from those countries to come to Britain to work, but also, if they want, to claim benefits. We don't want those people coming into our country.
As we've probably learned by now, a city is much more than its dictionary definition. It's not just a collection of buildings, it's an amalgamation of people, often groups who don't want to live with each other, or an amalgamation of cultures that don't fit in together. A city is also about acceptance, accepting to live with people different from you. And it's also an example of how people often fail to do that.